Have you ever woken up completely shivering from a cold room or flinched because a tiny piece of fuzz on your knee felt exactly like a spider? Well, all of those reactions are processed by the electrical and chemical signals of your nervous system. Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're diving into the intricate world of nervous tissue. But, the story of how it actually manages these complex reactions is full of misconceptions. We tend to give all the credit to one specific type of cell, and we completely ignore the massive, invisible workforce that literally keeps the lights on.
So, I've got to pose a question to you. Who really runs your nervous system? If you asked a biology student, they'd probably immediately shout, the neurons, right? Neurons are the famous frontmen of the brain. They're the ones we thank when we ace an exam or when we finally think of that snappy comeback to an argument a whole day too late. They respond to stimuli, they transmit signals, and they take all the glory. But to be honest, neurons act a bit like rock star divas. They have incredible abilities, sure, but they require a massive amount of upkeep, and they absolutely cannot function on their own. They aren't the whole story. Honestly, not even close.
Okay, let's dive into this. The neurons get all the publicity, but these wise guys really account for just an incredibly small part of your nervous tissue. If you were to look closely at a cross-section of nervous tissue, you'd see it's densely packed with cells. Less than 20% is just empty extracellular space. But the vast majority of those cells, they are not those famous neurons.
And this brilliantly illustrates the reality of your brain's makeup. It's a staggering 10-to-1 ratio. For every single neuron firing a signal in your body, there are roughly 10 other cells surrounding it, protecting it, and feeding it. These are called neuroglia or glial cells. Get this, they make up about half of the total mass of your brain. The neurons might be the ones sending the electrical impulses, but they are entirely outnumbered by this hidden workforce. So, let's formally define what we're looking at here. Neuroglia, or glial cells. The word glia actually comes from the Greek word for glue. And for a long time, scientists considered them to be exactly that, just the physical scaffolding or passive glue that simply held the important neurons together. But modern physiology tells a completely different story. We now know that the different glial cell types serve thousands of active, dynamic, and vital functions. They are the essential support staff. Without them, your neurons would literally starve, short-circuit, or be totally destroyed by infections. Now, to understand how these glial cells work, we need to quickly map out where they live. As you know, your nervous system is organized into two main parts. First, you've got the central nervous system, or CNS. This is your brain and your spinal cord, the absolute main control center that processes information and makes decisions. Second, you have the peripheral nervous system, or PNS. These are all the nerves branching off from the brain and spine that communicate with the rest of your body, picking up sensory stimuli and sending out motor commands. The glial cells we're talking about are specialized depending on which of these two territories they actually work in.
Let's meet the central crew, the CNS support staff.
This workforce is highly specialized. There are 4 distinct types of glial cells in your central nervous system, and each comes with very specific appearances and jobs. We've got astrocytes, microglia, ependymal cells, and oligodendrocytes. Let's break down exactly how each of these dedicated workers manages the brain's environment.
First up, the astrocytes. I kind of like to think of them as the managers. They're star-shaped, hence the astro in their name, and they are by far your most abundant and versatile glial cells. Remember earlier when I said neurons are like divas? Well, neurons have a crazy high metabolic rate. They need a steady, abundant supply of glucose and oxygen. In fact, about 25% of the calories you consume every single day go straight to brain activity. Astrocytes literally anchor the neurons to their blood supply and govern the exchange of materials between the neurons and the capillaries. They basically make sure the divas are fed. Next, we have the microglia. These are the thorny guards. They're smaller, somewhat thorny-looking cells that act as the tough security team for your central nervous system. Because your brain and spinal cord are so absolutely critical, they need their own dedicated defense force. Microglia actively patrol the area, providing the main immune defense by seeking out and dealing with invading microorganisms. They essentially keep the command center safe from microscopic invaders.
Then, we have the ependymal cells. Think of them as the cushion makers. Deep inside your brain and spinal cord, there are cavities. Well, these ependymal cells line those cavities and are responsible for creating, secreting, and circulating cerebrospinal fluid. So the really cool takeaway here is that right now, as you're taking in this information, it's the ependymal cells that are actively producing the fluid that literally cushions your brain inside your skull, protecting it from physical trauma.
Finally, rounding out the central crew, we have the oligodendrocytes. This is the insulation crew. Look, neurons communicate via electrical impulses. Just like the electrical wires in your house need a rubber coating so they don't short out or lose signal, your neurons need insulation too. Oligodendrocytes physically wrap themselves around the neurons in the brain and spinal cord, producing an insulating barrier called the myelin sheath. This ensures those electrical signals travel quickly and efficiently, without leaking out.
Now let's move to and see how this builds into the peripheral support staff, the PNS crew.
Over in the peripheral nervous system, the support staff is a bit more streamlined. There are just two kinds of glial cells here, and they perfectly mirror the jobs of their central nervous system counterparts. First, you have satellite cells. These do exactly what the star-shaped astrocytes do back in the brain. They surround and support the neuron cell bodies in the periphery, managing their environment. Second, you have Schwann cells. These act exactly like the oligodendrocytes. Schwann cells wrap around the long extensions of the neurons, the axons, to create that vital insulating myelin sheath out in your arms, legs, and internal organs. So, we started this explainer by praising the famous neurons. But after seeing the reality of the nervous system, things look a little different, don't they? We have a massive 10-to-1 ratio of support staff to neurons. We have 6 highly specialized types of glial cells, astrocytes feeding them, microglia protecting them, ependymal cells cushioning them, oligodendrocytes insulating them in the center, plus satellite and Schwann cells doing the exact same heavy lifting out in the periphery. Knowing that this so-called glue is actually doing the vital work to keep everything alive and functioning, I'll ask you one more time. Who really runs your nervous system? It's definitely something to think about the next time you marvel at your brain's capabilities. Thank you so much for... Have you ever woken